and welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be all about a scandal about the Swedish royals. Now before I get started, I would really like to say sorry for the way that I pronounce the name of the scandal. I have searched online to find a recording on how to pronounce it, but I can't find one anywhere. I did find a recording on how to pronounce the word that didn't have the J in it, so I'm sort of going to pronounce it by that but with the J in it. So I'm really sorry if I get it wrong, so feel free to correct me if I do. So the Haijby Scandal was a scandal in the 1950s in Sweden that involved King Gustav V. King Gustav V was born on the 16th of June 1858 and became King of Sweden on the 8th of December 1907. In 1881, Gustav married Princess Victoria of Banden and they had 3 children. Gustav died on the 29th of October 1950, and it was after his death that it came to light that the Swedish royal court had been paying a man called Kurt Haijby money. But who was Kurt Haijby and why was the Swedish royal court paying him money? Kurt Haijby's real name was Kurt Johansson and he was born in Stockholm in 1897. His father was a fishmonger and wine merchant to the royal court. Kurt worked many jobs including a waiter, an actor, a clerk and an illusionist. Between 1915 and 1925, Kurt was convicted many times for theft and fraud and sentenced to hard labour. In 1923, Kurt tried to escape prison, and while he was trying to escape prison, he shot and killed a police officer. After he was released from prison, Kurt moved around France and the United States, living a more nomadic lifestyle. In 1931, Kurt decided to open up a restaurant with his second wife, Anna. But because he was a convicted criminal, he was unable to get a license to sell wine. So Kurt asked for an audience with King Gustav in 1933 so that he could put forward his case to see if the king would be able to make it so he could get this license to sell wine, and this audience was agreed to. And it was during this audience that King Gustav had allegedly seduced Kurt and they started their relationship. Though some say that Gustav had first seduced Kurt in 1912 when he was a 14-year-old boy, after he had been granted an audience with the king while selling charity flowers with the Boy Scouts. But there is actually no evidence to support this. So Kurt's wife Anna found out about her husband's affair with the king in 1936 and filed for divorce, citing the reason for the divorce was her husband's relationship with the king. Not wanting it getting out that the king was having a relationship with a man, the Swedish royal court managed to convince Anna to settle for an amicable, no-fault divorce by paying her 15,000 krona. Apparently, King Gustav V had said, "There must not be a scandal, but do it with as little money as possible." The royal court gave Kurt 1,500 krona and encouraged him to emigrate to the United States. And then once in the United States, he was to receive a further 3,000 krona to help him start a new life. But once Kurt had reached the United States, he said that he had not been given this 3,000 krona. So he returned back to Sweden and asked the royal court for more money. For several years, the royal court basically funded loads of his failed enterprises, and in total they had given him around 117,000 krona. So in 1938, Kurt was arrested for child sexual abuse against an 11-year-old boy and a 13-year-old boy. For this, Kurt was sent to an asylum for some reason, but the psychiatrist in charge of the asylum felt that Kurt did not need any psychological care, so he was discharged and the child abuse case was never brought to court. In 1939, a deal was arranged where Kurt was forced to emigrate to Nazi Germany. I'm guessing the royal court didn't want to pay him any more money. And after a short while in Germany, Kurt was arrested by the Gestapo, which was probably at the request of the Swedish court. But while he was in prison, he wasn't tortured by the Gestapo and he actually lived in relative comfort. So charges of sexual relations with 2 young boys was brought against him while he was in Germany, and he was sent to prison until 1940, when he was banished back to Sweden after he had served his sentence. Back in Sweden, Kurt reunited with his ex-wife Anna, but in 1941, due to political pressure, Kurt was once again put into an asylum. So in 1947, Kurt used his own money to publish Roman Eclair. So Roman Eclair is a novel about a real-life event that is overlaid with a facade of fiction. So basically it is a story about real events that happened, but there is just enough fiction in it, where like names being changed and some details sort of being changed, so that the person who wrote it would not be able to get like prosecuted for like libel or anything like that. So 1,000 copies of this book was printed, and half of these were brought by the royal court and the other half were brought by his ex-wife Anna. So while Kurt was in the asylum for the second time, he reported his forced confinement to the Attorney General of Sweden. So the papers on this report were immediately classified, but they were smuggled out of the Attorney General's office by a Swedish journalist called Wilhelm Moberg. King Gustav's relationship with Kurt became public knowledge. So officials tried to suppress this, which caused acrimonious debate in Parliament and in the press, and as a result of this, Kurt was charged with acts of blackmail. They're basically saying that Kurt was blackmailing the king by saying, "Give me money else I'll tell everyone about our relationship," though there is actually no evidence at all that Kurt was blackmailing anyone. The royal court could have just been paying him money to buy his silence without Kurt actually saying anything. So Kurt was sentenced to 8 years hard labour, but this was reduced down to 6 years of hard labour after an appeal. So King Gustav had died by this time, and in 1965 Kurt ended up committing suicide. But did Kurt and King Gustav have a sexual relationship? Most people believed that they were, and the fact that the royal court was paying Kurt all this money was evidence of this. In fact, later on, many servants, including chauffeurs and a male servant, claimed that they were also given money by the royal court to keep quiet about their relationship with the king. So that is the story of the Haijby Scandal. Again, I am really sorry if I am pronouncing that name wrong. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.